Hey Karate Atlanta family, this is Mr. Van Ack from Karate Atlanta Tequila. Wanted to get you guys going for your fantastic Extreme Fridays going today. Today we're working on the leadership weapon that we have for our leadership class is the sword. So working on some cool leadership sword stuff. Want to go over a couple things that you guys should know of the sword. If you're competing or working to compete in creative or extreme, just remember the rules. For extreme, you can do pretty much anything with the sword, as long as you're not putting your hand on the blade. That's always a no-no for obvious reasons. For creative weapons, remember that the weapon has to be connected to your body at all times. So if you're looking to build something for competition, just make sure you guys know those rules ahead of time. Also in creative, can't do any spins over 360, and you're trying to work on making sure you're doing traditional moves. The whole spirit of creative competition is that you're putting basic strikes in there that you would do in a fight scene, but trying to do it as creatively as possible while still applying as much as you can as the weapon to it to make it as cool as can be. For extreme, you got everything no holds barred, doing crazy weapon manipulations, where though they may not be practical, they are extremely difficult to get down and learn. So that's the whole idea for our sword today. Now, I'm gonna mirror image you guys for just a second so you guys know how to hold the sword. I'll show you guys a couple things from the combinations going forwards and backwards. We'll go through a real basic combination with the sword. We'll give you guys a couple options on how you can spice it up a little bit too. So holding it, mirror imaging you guys right now, holding it with my left hand, you would want your right hand at the top by the suba, the guard here. Got the regular XMA sword here with some grip tape on it. But you want to put your right hand at the top by the suba, put your left hand at the bottom. And I like to take my pinky and cover the pommel of the sword. That way I have excellent control. All right, so first thing first, whenever you're doing any sword stuff, it's really important to make sure you wake up your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders, because that's the main muscle groups you're working on. So we're just gonna make sure we work with some arm circles, get those shoulders moving. All right, forwards and backwards. Go side to side a little bit. All right, take your wrists, bring the sword back and forth like a windshield wiper. Make sure you wake up those wrists. Other side, same thing. All right, make sure you got your elbows going, a couple chops down. Same thing with the other side. All right, so the first combination you do with the sword, not mirror imaging you guys, I'll face the back so you guys can follow me in just a second. But the basic combination you have with the sword is what I call the X combo, where you're literally gonna make an X with the sword. So I'd start in my regular ready stance, using front stances to chop across, diagonal cut, up and up. From here, usually you would cut to spin and block finish, however you like to finish that combination. So one more time, starting from the right to the left, you're gonna cut diagonal, all right, up diagonal, spin and cut, boom, and block. However you wanna finish, always make sure you start strong, finish strong. So facing the back, so you guys can follow me, same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom. Making sure you can do all those cuts together. All right, so I wanna make sure you guys have that combination down. We're gonna do it a couple more times, just so you guys can do it. We'll start slow, we'll do an intermediate speed, then we'll speed it up, and we'll give you another sword combination option to spice it up, make it a little bit harder. So we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, finish. Again, this time we'll go a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom. And this time we'll go full speed. We even add our presentation elements, adding some drama and intensity. So starting off, make sure you have a good beginning, build that intensity. Hush, hush, pull, yes, whoop, wah. Same thing facing the back. Yes, hush, pull, yes, whoop, wah. So that's combination 1, real simple, real basic. We'll get combo 2 here in a second. Now, before we go into segment 2 of our sword combination for cutting, I wanna go over just easy ways you guys can practice with the sword. Now, I realize too, some of you guys might not have a physical sword at your house. Some of you guys might have your bongmangi, which you can use kind of as a sword, a spatula, something that is sword shaped. You don't always have to have the weapon to train the weapon. Remember, a weapon is just an extension of your body, so if you can manipulate something into be your weapon, it's a weapon now. So anything that looks like a sword, some of you guys might be Star Wars fans, you might have a lightsaber, that should work perfect too. So before we go into our second combo, we're gonna go over just a couple different cutting drills you guys can work on practicing. And the number 3 cuts that you're gonna use with the sword is your diagonal cuts, all right, and your overhead cut. All right, the best thing to work on making great, clean, crisp sword cuts is making sure you have proper technique. With the sword, that means having good push and pull. My right hand's pushing the blade forward, my left hand pulls the blade back to make that clean chop. So just working here, don't even have to worry about any stances, working on cutting, pushing, and pulling through each time. And when you do it correctly, you should hear a small whistle. Whether it's a wooden sword, plastic sword, you should hear something of the tip of the blade cutting through the air. That's what you want to hear. All right, the last thing that we have for sword is having good, proper technique, push and pull. We have to have good, definite end point. What that means is when I finish a cut, it shouldn't wiggle at the end. I should be able to go 1, 2, and it shouldn't wiggle. All right, same thing if I go overhead cut. Should be able to stop it right there and have total control of your weapon. The last thing you want to have too is having follow through. So once I cut, if I stop here, you guys can see the blade, it didn't follow through my target. I want it to go all the way through, all the way through. The only cut that there is an asterisk on that's the exception, is when I do my overhead cut, I don't want to go all the way down because I don't want it to cut me. And if I was in a sword fight and I missed my target, now if they run at me, they're going to stab themselves on my blade. So on that overhead cut, I never want it to go below my belt. Always want to keep it up. All right, so a great drill to practice, we're gonna do it right here, is working on number 1 cut, number 2 cut, and number 8. Doing that 10 times. So starting here, 1, 2, 1, sir. 2, sir. 3, sir. Facing the back so you guys can follow along too. I hope you guys can hear that whistle a little bit too. That's really important. That's how you know you got a good solid cut. All right. Now there's other cuts. You have your side to side cuts. We have all 9 angles. We have cutting up, whether I'm cutting and stopping almost like a block, whether I'm cutting through like we do for the XMA X cut combo. All right. And the last one, of course, you always have stab and pull. And traditionally, you would flick the blood of your enemies off your sword as well too, to finish before you would sheath it. One thing too, if you're gonna use your sheath for creative weapons, if you're gonna use the sheath is part of the weapon, so it has to stay connected to you at all times. You can't put the sheath down. If you start the division without the sheath, then you don't have to worry about that. In extreme weapons, you can, however, put the sheath down and it's all good, because anything goes in extreme weapons. Just keep that in mind if you are building a competition form. If you're just working on performance, having some fun, learning some new stuff, that's not something you have to worry about. So we're gonna go into combination 2 now that we have some of the basics, we built some foundations. We're gonna work on combination 2, and we're gonna add some blocks and some footwork to make it a little bit more fun. Nothing too fancy. Anyone and everyone can do this combination. So we're gonna start from the upright position again. We're gonna cut down. Now when we cut down, I'm gonna bring my feet together. I'm gonna bring the sword up and over as a block, almost like a fan strike from combat weapons. So we have 1, 2, and then cutting, boom, back down. From here, we're gonna add a stab. We're gonna pull, circle it up, and then cut straight down. So nothing, like I said, nothing too hard. We have 1, toes up, block 2, cut back down, stab, pull, circle, bringing their hand sword up, cutting down. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up, and 6. Going it backwards so you guys can follow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up, and 6. Nothing too crazy. So doing it in full speed, adding our presentation. Hush! Now I want to see what you guys got too. So make sure you can always send a video in to your chief instructor, show them what you got with your sword stuff too. Last thing we'll do today is go through some cool sword tricks you can learn just about anywhere. So, alrighty guys, hopefully you finished all those different sword cutting drills, some combinations. Now it's time to add the frosting on the cake, which is your weapon trick. So we have a couple of really easy ones that you guys can work on learning. The first one is what one of my good instructor friends used to work here at Tequila. He's over in Milton now, Mr. Brown. He coined this as the chainsaw trick. So I'm gonna turn a little bit sideways so you guys can see. Would be after the overhead cut. We have both hands. All you're gonna do is kind of pop your sword up. So if I just pop my sword up like this, it doesn't look very cool yet. It is one thing if I'm releasing the sword, not for creative, but more for extreme weapons. But I'm gonna release and add a flick with my wrists, almost like you would rev like a motorcycle or anything. Toss it up. So looking forward, I will cut down, let it come up. The goal is to try to keep the blade kind of hovering flat so you can see it still. So if I'm here, I don't want the sword to flip. That's a different trick. That's one of the first releases we learn on how we can start releasing the sword. We'll get to that one in a moment. Right now we want to make sure we're trying to keep the sword up nice and level as we cut. So we go cut, chainsaw, cut, chainsaw. 1, 2. As you get better, you can do it with one hand. You can catch it in different grips. That way you can go move on to other tricks too. So we have first trick is the chainsaw. The second trick we have is just a wrist roll. So all I'm gonna do is put my hand out flat. I want the blade to go sideways. I'm putting the blades of the side of the blade on my wrist. I wanna give it a small flick so it rolls over. I have to have my other hand there after I release it to catch it. So it goes roll over, catch, roll it back over, and catch. Now when it comes back, it's gonna come back a little bit faster because it's got more gravity working on it. So you wanna work on just being able to juggle back and forth. And for swords, or if you're using something different, the best way to find this is you have to find the balance point of the sword. My sword has some Chinese characters on it, and the balance point is right close to there. You can find the balance point by putting one finger out and just trying to find where it's gonna balance nice and easy on your finger. So I found the balance point right here. It's probably a little bit lower because it's tipping that way. But once I find that spot, that's where I wanna put my wrist. So it's easy for it to roll over, back and forth, and then you can start to combine it, put it in other combinations. This one's easy to do right from like our X cut combination we did earlier. I can bring the sword down, roll it over for my wrist roll, bring it back up, and I can even combine that chainsaw trick with it, so now I have a couple chains. All right, and the last trick that we're gonna go through is that same thing when we're working on trying to juggle the sword. There's a lot of different ways you can do releases for your sword or juggle it. The first easy one is working on just being able to flip it backwards, and then using my elbow and my wrist, I can also flip it forward. So we have backwards and forwards. And the fun part about this and most of these tricks is you can end the trick differently, catching the sword in a different way, so you can start for other tricks. Like if you noticed in the wrist roll, I'm catching the sword in what we call negative grip, more like you would hold a knife. And I'm bringing it back to a regular grip like so. All right, so when I juggle the sword, I can also do other ways where I catch it in reverse grip, or it's flipping more, flipping less. All right, same thing going here instead of regular grip. You work on, and if you drop it, it's gonna happen. But you work on being able to catch it in negative grip too. So you have different ways to go. All right, and remember, when you drop the sword, it's okay, that's part of learning. Hopefully you're practicing in a soft area where you're not gonna ding up your sword. You don't want that to happen, especially if you got a nice metal sword. All right, the last of the releases that gets harder, all right, is working on if I wanna add like figure 8 twirls, which we'll have to go over in another video. It's a little bit harder to learn, but it's just doing a regular figure 8 forward. Instead of doing it forward on either side of my body, I leave it sideways, so it's going in front of me and behind me. So it goes in front, behind, and I'm rolling it just like a figure 8. But you can roll it into that wrist roll, or you can roll it into the juggle, releasing your sword and catching it with your other hand. You can also catch it with the same hand, reverse grip, I can flip it back. Now you have a couple different ways you can work on some of these different releases. Now one of the harder releases is having the sword whip around your body, what we call a box cutter release. So for that, I'm gonna put it down by my belt. I'm gonna use my elbow and my wrist to bring the sword out. I'm gonna use my elbow to kind of pop it up with my wrist. So it kind of pops up, and I wanna catch it with the other hand. I can do it with the other side, back and forth. And again, it's easy to do this one and catch it in reverse grip, however you wanna do it. You can also do it from other ways. I can also bring it this way forward and catch it instead of bringing it across my belt. I can start forward and whip it this way where it comes in and catch, almost like a bow staff trick that you see when they roll it in front of them. So there's a lot of different options with the sword. You have the first cutting drills that we talked about, having 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We have the X combination we went through. 1, 2, 3, 4. Spin, boom, boom. You have the blocking combo, it's a little bit different. Going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up, 6. Then you have all the sword tricks that we worked on. We worked on our downward cut to chainsaw. We worked on the wrist roll. We worked on juggling the sword, having different releases with the sword, and even some of the harder releases with the sword. All right, the number one thing with any weapon, if you're doing martial arts weapons, is you can't be afraid of the weapon. The weapon is in your control, you have to control it. As soon as it gets out of control, you have to make sure that you go back to bring it in control. So it takes practice. I don't recommend starting with a wooden sword, with a metal sword right away. It's always better to start with a plastic sword, a wooden sword, something where if it does hit you, it's not gonna hurt too much. And then as you build more confidence, you can upgrade, get a better sword. It's gonna feel a little bit different when you're cutting and stuff with it too. All right, so that's our Fantastic Fridays for Extreme Sword. If you guys like this, make sure you follow us on Karate Atlanta. Make sure you post a comment. Make sure you shout out to all the different Karate Atlanta instructors that have been doing an awesome job putting out different content for your family and for yourself to train. And from the bottom of my heart and all of our Karate Atlanta instructors, thank you so much to continue to train in this time. I hope you guys get some awesome stuff from this video. If you did and if you want more, make sure you comment, post below so we can give you guys some more material to work with. Well, thank you guys. We'll see you later.